An economic miracle is taking place in the United States, and the only thing that can stop it are foolish wars, politics, or ridiculous partisan investigations. If there is going to be peace and legislation, there cannot be war and investigation. It just doesn't work that way.
Well, a lot of things under Trump don't work at all. I'm Barry Gordon.
And I'm Andre Coleman.
And this is NewsRap, live at 5. All right. Well,
The speech was bad enough when I had to hear it the first time. Now I had to hear it 3 times a day.
Well, you didn't have to hear a whole hour and 22 minutes
Yeah,
of it
because I didn't
today,
listen to
though.
it the first time.
Yeah. Oh, I listened to it. The problem was it was meaningless.
I love myself way too much to torture myself like that.
Oh, I watched the whole thing.
Nah, I'm not doing that to myself.
And I watched Stacey Abrams. Did you watch Stacey?
I did watch Stacey Abrams.
And how'd you like Stacey?
I thought she did good. You know, I found this text number.
Yeah.
And you text this code, and then they would text back and say, Trump is off the air. Tune in now to hear Stacey Abrams. So I got a text, and I just turned the TV on.
No, I watched it, and you know something. He talked about the opioid crisis, and he talked about helping prescription drugs. Except he only said only mentioned disclosure,
Yeah.
which that's not going to solve the problem. And he mentioned some other things that the AIDS epidemic. I mean, he mentioned some things that Democrats would love, and the problem was that it was meaningless because he started with a blackmail note.
Yeah.
And so basically the theory that I got from it, and that's why we wanted to run that initial clip, because that was the most important and frankly the only important line in the speech. Because what he basically said is, if you stop investigating me, we can do some great things.
It'll be Pollyannic.
Right. But if you don't stop investigating me, there'll be war. That was literally the word he used. I don't think he meant a shooting war. I think he meant a war with Congress. He said, we can either have peace, meaning between us, we can either have peace and legislation, and everyone wants legislation, that's what Congress is there for, or we can have war and investigation.
And
we can't have both.
And then Adam Schiff showed him what war and investigation looks like.
And then he showed him what it was. So the rest of the speech didn't mean anything because, you can say, I'm going to give you all these goodies, but what you have to do, right, is stop investigating me. And what that means, by the way, folks, to be very basic about it, is that he's saying they can do all kinds of great things if Congress gives up its constitutional responsibility to investigate possible wrongdoing.
If they take a step back and they're no longer a co-equal form of government, he's saying that it will go fine.
Yeah.
My issue is, with where we are now as a country, I am not trying to hear him say the State of the Union is strong or fine or any of that. And I wouldn't want to hear any president say that right now. We are divided.
We are.
And you know what? We need to deal with those divisions, but we are not going to deal with those divisions saying, let's not investigate this.
That's right.
We're not going to deal with those divisions by saying, leave me alone, put me up a step higher, and I can fix it for everybody. The idea that I alone can fix it, and I'm smarter than the generals, and I'm the only one who can beat ISIS, and I'm the only one who can fix the economy, and I'm the only one who can drive the space shuttle. That's how the hell we got here in the first place.
That's right.
So, that's it.
No, that's right. And the fact is that the investigation that he doesn't want to see happen started today.
Oh, yeah.
And they brought Matt Whitaker forward and asked him some tough questions, and then he did something that I'm a little surprised that they didn't kind of remind him that what he was doing had no legal basis. The president can invoke executive privilege. Nixon did it. Obama has done it. Any president
Well, every president's done it.
invoke executive privilege. Someone under the president does not invoke executive privilege.
Right.
So you notice that he never said, I invoke executive privilege. We're talking about Matt Whitaker, the acting attorney general who was brought before the House Oversight Committee today. He never said, I invoke executive privilege, because legally he can't. So he said this kind of cockamamie thing, which was, I won't answer these questions because the president might invoke executive privilege.
Right.
Well, he had no ability to do that. He had no right to do that. And I'm a little surprised that at that point, Nadler didn't say, if you don't answer these questions, you are in contempt of Congress.
And see, they should have.
Or we'll take a pause. Let's call the White House.
Exactly. Figure this out.
And if the president wants to invoke executive privilege,
Give him an
then let
opportunity
him
to do so.
But he's been doing this with everyone.
Right.
Jeff Sessions has done it.
His kid did it.
They have all done it. There's no legal basis for it. I don't know what the heck his lawyers are telling him, but there is no legal basis for it. And it is very, very aggravating. Because if he wants to invoke executive privilege, invoke it. Let's get it to court. Let's have the fight.
That's right. That's right. So, Barry, how can the people get in on this conversation?
How can the people get in on this?
Let's talk about the people.
You know how to get in on this conversation already. You just head over to Facebook, to the Pasadena Media page on Facebook, and you can also go to Instagram, I think.
Yep.
And jump on and
we want to hear from
join
you.
the conversation live. And also, we're streaming, as you know, on the Arroyo channel live. We do that every week, except we didn't do it last week.
We
were
weren't
down
here.
last
We weren't
week.
here.
We weren't here. But we try, and we'll be here every week whenever we can be. So we're on the Arroyo channel, Charter Channel 32. We call it Charter or Spectrum? I don't know anymore.
It's both.
It's
a little
both.
of each.
Okay, Charter Spectrum Channel 32 or AT&T Channel 99. And you can follow us, you can like us, you can share us, and you can subscribe and do all of those great things. We even have a comment right away
right.
from Behind the Curtains. Do we know who that is?
I don't know, but I don't want to go behind the curtains and find out. I always get wary of that kind of thing.
Behind the Curtains. And
Trump.
we can only see part of it right now, guys. Trump makes it seem like, and then we can't read the rest.
Like he's helping African American people by freeing prisoners
You're just gonna fill in the blanks.
and
We're gonna
inviting
play
them
Mad
to the state
Libs.
of.
What is this?
and well, I'm guessing on it.
No, there it is. So Trump makes it seem like he's, well, you got that part.
Helping
African
Got it right.
Americans, American people by
Freeing prisoners.
I guess it is freeing prisoners, yes, and inviting them to the State of the Union address.
Wow.
Well, he also said that we had the lowest minority unemployment.
But you know, the African American
And that's
numbers.
probably accurate because we have a very, very good labor market right
But
now.
the African American unemployment number is slowly starting to tick up again.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, that's why he doesn't tout it anymore. So it is slowly starting to tick up.
So I want to talk a little bit
Go.
about Virginia. What
Do you see what
is
my body
happening?
language? Did you see my
What-
body
yeah,
language?
I know. You don't want to touch this thing.
No, I want to touch this thing.
Oh, okay.
I
go
want
for
to
it.
touch this thing a lot.
Go for it.
Racist ass rednecks down in Virginia doing blackface, wearing sheets over their heads, and you have a bunch of people, this is the dumbest part of it all, going, well, which one was he? Talking about the governor. Which one is he in the picture?
Yeah.
What the hell different does it make? He's both. He's a racist.
Yeah. And that would be fine. That would be clear as
And
day.
I know there's other stuff
that
going on
he
with other
should
people.
resign.
He's got to get out of there.
Then what?
Well, then we have to deal with the next guy and the rape allegations against him.
Yeah, don't we though?
But this is the point. Democrats aren't made, they're not untouchable. If this guy is a racist, the Democratic Party needs to disavow this guy, and this guy's got to get out of there.
Okay.
If the next guy is a rapist,
Okay.
then the party has to disavow this guy, and he has to go too.
Okay, so the three guys go,
Yeah.
and you're perfectly happy with a conservative Virginia governor.
No, but I'm not happy with the racist Democratic one either.
I hear that.
Okay? Look, the conservative guy, I probably know that he's put on blackface before. Mm-hmm. I don't have time for a guy pretending he didn't when I know he did. That's an issue for me.
Well, I agree with that, and I
Stand for who
think
you are.
Northam. I mean, the fact that Northam initially said, "I apologize,"
Because of what I
and
did
he
in my-
also used interesting language because he said something like, well, "Whoever I hurt then and now."
Yeah.
So he admitted that he
Right.
did it, and then turned around and said, "No, I didn't." So then everyone thought, okay, Justin Fairfax, yay, right?
And then-
Second black Virginia governor. Pow, right? So then Herring, right?
Yeah, but the thing, well,
Pow.
let's go back.
So then the question is, at what point do we allow an apology, or are we simply going to say, okay, if the consequence is we'll have a conservative governor and,
We're not there
and
yet.
give up our foothold
We're not
as
there
a
yet.
Democratic Party,
We're not there yet.
what are we going to do?
We're not there yet. The allegations against the lieutenant governor need to be heard, and he needs to be given a chance to defend himself.
Okay. But you want Northam to go in the meantime? So
That-
you want those allegations against the sitting governor?
Northam has admitted to it.
And Herring said they dressed up like rappers that they listened to.
Well, you know what?
So what, I mean, at some point, right, it's all wrong. There's no question
Get 'em out.
about that. Okay.
Get him out. And then,
But understand that the consequence may well be that we lose Virginia.
Okay.
And we may lose Virginia in 2020 and give the governorship to a Republican.
Then you know what?
And make it very
Then you know what?
hard.
We have
make
to-
it very hard for the Democrats to win the state.
You know what?
I'm just saying
There's not a
there's a
Demo-
bigger picture here.
there's not a Democrat leading the state right now, Barry. See, once I see that, you're not a Democrat anymore. You're not a Republican.
Okay, I can't go there.
Well,
because
hang on. I gave
there's
you a chance to
difference,
talk.
But
Let-
there's a
let me talk.
difference between
Let me
Democratic
talk.
policies and Republican policies.
But there's not a difference between racism no matter who's doing it. I don't give a damn if he's a Democratic or Republican. I give a damn he's a racist. Get his ass out, on to the next guy. We deal with the next guy. We have a fair election, and we try to win the seat back. But I'm not going to put up with a guy in blackface or a guy with a sheet on his head so I can say there's a Democrat in office.
I agree about Northam. I'm with you on Northam.
So that's-
I don't know if I'm with you on Herring.
I'm not there yet.
Okay.
I'm just at the governor.
All right,
Get rid of him.
yeah,
and
I'd
then we
like
can
the
have-
governor to go, 'cause he
then we
lied.
can have some discussions
Yeah.
after that.
No, I agree with that.
That's all I'm saying.
I'm with you on that.
All right.
All right.
I thought we were going to have to go outside, man. I was going to have to bring you over to my position for a second.
Let's look at what's happening locally
That's what was about to happen
before we
local.
get into a lot of trouble. Let's see what's happening locally.
Pasadena Police Chief John Perez and City Manager Steve Marmel sat down for a moderated community discussion at the Alkebulan Multicultural Center Thursday, February 7th, for an ongoing discussion about the relationship between the police and the communities of Northwest Pasadena.
He's made a commitment to bring his people here. He's done that. He wants to do more of that. But I would challenge all of you a little bit to be welcoming when they come.
When you understand the angst that people in the community have, it's going to show up this way. And
Right.
so, to Jasmine's point, if their feelings are going to be hurt, they don't need to be police officers.
I'd rather sit down with the community and say, how do we talk about the data? How do we talk about what crime is really happening? About what's the percentage of crime being reported? Who are we stopping? Why are we stopping over here and maybe not over there? There's so many discussion points to help officers understand all this.
If there is to be trust between law enforcement and the community, it is clear that these conversations need to take place, no matter how difficult they may be.
Well, 2 weeks ago, we had a special guest, Dr. Peter Dreyer from Occidental College, who talked about a couple of things. He talked about his report, which was A Tale of Two Cities, two Pasadena cities, and income inequality. But he also talked about his major campaign that he was involved in to raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour in the city of Pasadena. And we thought it would be really cool to hear another perspective, perhaps a different perspective. I'm going to assume it is. And I can't think of anyone better to do it than our guest today, who's a 37-year resident of Pasadena, active in city politics, former commissioner, the whole ball of wax, a local businessman who will be affected by an increase in the minimum wage and can talk very, very effectively about how it will affect business people in this city, so that we get to hear a couple of different sides. And so I'm very pleased to introduce on NewsRap, Robin Salzer. Robin, welcome.
Well, thank you very much, and I'm happy to be here.
Great.
I'm actually surprised you stuck around after that almost brawl you just saw.
Well,
Between us.
it's the
People don't know you were sitting here the whole time
Yeah,
watching
right.
that while we were going back
But
and forth.
we agreed at
Yeah,
the end.
we agreed
at the
we're
end.
fine.
We usually do.
So let me start here. What Peter Dreyer wants is very, very clear. He wants the city manager to make an amendment to the current ordinance, which would allow the minimum wage to go to $14.25 on July 1st this year, and then $15, excuse me, in 2020. What is it that you're asking for?
First of all, I respect all the passion that Peter has and my good friends like Ed Washatka and Pop. But what we are asking as small business people is to go on the state line, the state timeline. The $15 an hour on the state line will be an 18-month gap.
So what's the state's minimum wage right now?
State's minimum wage right now is $12 an hour, and we in Pasadena now are $13.25.
So the state goes to $15 in 2022, am I correct?
Yes, correct.
So that means that for 2 years, while the state catches up to where Pasadena is now,
Yes,
there would be a freeze on minimum wage increases.
correct.
Are you taking money out of people's pockets?
No, I would look at it this way: we're saving jobs, and this is all about the respect and dignity of the employees that we have now. I mean, it's a business decision. I mean, when costs go up, you have to raise your prices. That's number one. That's the first thing you do is you raise your prices, but it comes to a point you can only raise your prices so much. What's the next thing you do? You look at your business template and you cut costs. What's the first thing you do is you look at labor, and that's heart-wrenching. I mean, you have, in my situation, I have staff that's been with me, I have a manager that's been with me 34 years. I haven't hired a server in 12 years.
How many employees do you have, Robin?
I had 30 employees, I now have 21. And I made that adjustment because out of necessity, I had to.
Did you lay them off or did they leave?
They left. I didn't have the heart to lay anybody off, but I had to cut my staff. So through attrition, as people would leave, we didn't rehire. We didn't hire other people. And what I had to do was cut hours. And so if somebody was working 35 hours, they're now working 30 hours. But I think more impactfully for me is I took a restaurant that was 7 days a week, and now I'm open 3 days a week. I had to cut out 300 hours a week. And the bottom line is I have to protect and sustain my business to protect my staff. My staff is my family. And this story is repeated probably by almost every restaurant and small business in Pasadena.
So you said, I just want to kind of reiterate. So you said we're at $13.25 now?
Yes.
And we would go to 15
Next year, next July 1st.
next year, right?
Yes.
And on the state schedule, we'd stay at $13.25?
I believe we would stay at $13.25, and on January 1st of 2022, it'd go to 15.
Right. Now, the only obvious thing that comes to my mind is that $15 in 2022 is likely to be worth less than $15 in 2020, right?
Well,
because inflation has to erode some of that, and inflation is moving upward right now. Because, I mean, at least according to the Fed,
But I'm not looking at it that way.
Upward.
I'm looking at the hours that my staff are working. I'm not looking at the $15. Nobody in my restaurant makes minimum wage except tipped employees. In fact, the Pasadena minimum wage ordinance says that if you have 26 or more employees, you pay $13.25 an hour. If you have 25 or less, I believe it's $12 an hour. I have 21 employees. They all make the higher tier because, again, out of respect and dignity for my staff. But again, you can only raise prices so much. You can only cut back so much. I mean, at the end of the day, we're a service business. And that's why you see kiosks at McDonald's. That's why you see iPads at Olive Garden and Chili's, because they're replacing, these chains can afford to do it. They're replacing the servers and front of the house staff that they have.
But that's coming anyway, isn't it?
It's coming, but again, what's the whole issue? It's not technology, it's not anything other than being on the state timeline.
Not to interrupt, let me back you up for a second. So Pasadena has its own minimum wage ordinance.
Correct.
You want Pasadena to move to the state's minimum wage ordinance.
Correct.
Who else is on the state's ordinance?
Almost every city in California, with the exception of Los Angeles, I believe the county of Los Angeles and their unincorporated areas.
Like Altadena?
Like Altadena, but who's with the state regarding Pasadena? La Cañada, Alhambra, San Gabriel, Arcadia, South Pasadena, Glendale.
So everybody's surrounding us.
Everybody's surrounding us, and it creates an unfair business disadvantage for us as employers, which also necessitates us to look very hard at our operations. And the terrible, byproduct of this whole thing is that we have to protect our employees, and we've had to cut hours and we've had to raise prices.
We got a comment up there.
We've got a few.
You take the first
How
one.
does this work in places it was already implemented in? This, I'm assuming, means
The California
Well, I think
wage.
I guess.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know. I thought he was talking maybe about the Los Angeles wage, which is what we would be going to. So.
Well, I mean, I don't know how you can compare. I mean, if if the cities surrounding us are at a different wage than we are, I don't know how you can compare us to the city of Los Angeles, because you have to go through Pasadena and those other cities to get to Los Angeles. I think it's
Well, not really. I mean, you
but I
go
think it's an
down the
unfair
freeway
compar-
and you're in downtown LA.
right. But I mean, when you tout yourself as a city that has more restaurants per capita than any city in the United States, and let's not forget the nonprofits in here too, and you have a city that has more nonprofits than any city in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
When I started here in 1982, the pie wedges of business they were much larger than they are today. We had about 280 some plus restaurants in 1982. Now we're over 550 restaurants. The competition is more, and it's this. You have to have an apples to apples comparison. I mean, and I don't see that out there.
Well, let me ask you this: when you say apples to apples, you've talked about your business, your staff. Well, let's talk family, and you talked about your staff as family.
Right.
I get that. But so then let's talk about family. So the guy who's making $13.25 right now,
Correct.
and is using his money to pay rent to live in Pasadena, and we know $13.25 is not going to pay rent in Pasadena an
Right.
hour. So let's say that.
Right.
That guy now is not going to $14.25 in July 1st. If you get your way, he's staying at $13.25, so you can keep your business. Fine. But isn't he saying that we should go to $14.25 so he could feed his family?
But the byproduct of that might be that if we do go to $14.25 and we have to go through another evaluation of our individual businesses, that $13.25 an hour, now $14.25 an hour employee who works 35 hours a week might be working 30 hours a week. We may have to cut schedules a little
lose
bit
money
back.
on the deal.
So he could lose money there. It's a net loss.
The Lima report, there were two reports that the city of Pasadena received, and one was the Lima report and one was the Reich report. And the Lima report did talk about this possible reduction of hours. But the bottom line of both reports seemed to say that the employment effect, which is usually what we hear, you're going to lose jobs, that the employment effect is either negligible in one case or inconclusive in another case. So, I mean, we keep hearing the argument, but then we keep reading the empirical evidence that suggests that it doesn't have that negative impact on employment. Anecdotally, I'm also hearing from businesses that there's been a reduction in hours. I heard from one business that had 60 employees that they've had to go take a lot of full-time employees and put them on part-time. So there's no question that there's a negative impact on that. I guess I want to ask, and I'm not asking you to solve the problems of the world, Robert, but I guess clearly in this country, in this state, in this city, there is a massive problem of income inequality. It's just really massive. And frankly, $15 an hour isn't going to solve it. What is? I mean, we've got technology changes. Things are getting more automated. The limited service restaurants, for example, are getting more and more automated. What is the answer to this?
It's a heart-wrenching problem, and that affects everybody regardless of race, creed, gender, political persuasion. I think the answer, and maybe not the perfect answer, is first on a personal level, I don't care what the minimum wage is, as long as it's fair. It can be $25 an hour. We'll adjust. If the playing field is level, it can be $30 an hour. I don't care. We'll raise our prices. But there is one segment of our population that will be affected by it, and that's our seniors. Because people on fixed incomes, people on 401ks that may not be, in Social Security, they only make so much. So they're very loyal customers to us. So if you inhibit them, I went off track, but if you inhibit them, that's hurting them. But it's a societal problem that we have, that we're dealing with. The inequalities of income, and I mean, you talk about rent control, you talk about minimum wage. I mean, these are all major issues. There is no rock solid defining answer, but you have to start somewhere. And I think where you start in any of these situations, whatever you're trying to fix, you have to start out of fairness, and you have to start with a level playing field. And I think if you start, regarding this issue with the minimum wage, in my heart, I think we'll be able to hire more people and give them a better opportunity at getting a job if we're on a level playing field. 18 months to get to kind of a fair level. And I think then let the chips fall where they fall, and the weak operators will be out.
How do you feel about if the state were to decide you want a level playing field? So I'm assuming you're saying you want the state to take action, and that will affect everyone in the state.
So Pasadena moved to the state, and then we do what the state does, is what he wants.
Okay. Now, has the state indexed the minimum wage to inflation after the $15?
I believe it is.
Cost of living increases at 3% per year.
I believe it is.
Okay.
And I'm fine with that. And I think most people are fine with it. And I think, most of my colleagues and most small business owners are not against the minimum wage. The only thing we want is to have an opportunity to protect our employees, to not lay them off, and to sustain our businesses. If we don't sustain our businesses, we can't hire people. And I think that by having a level playing field for 18 months, I think you'll be amazed at what can come from it. It's not going to be a happy answer for many people, but I believe that is the right way, the fair way, and I hope our city council sees it that way.
I got to call BS on something you said, though.
Yeah.
You don't want you said you don't care if the minimum wage is $30.
That was a hypothetical, and that was just,
Yeah. But hang on, I'm going to a real point here.
Please.
Right now, you want us to freeze at $13.25.
Correct.
Okay. If we freeze at $13.25, and Barry had a good point about $15 not being enough by 2022. If we get to 2022 and somebody says we need to be at 25 or 20, Peter Dreyer's work said 35 or 40, if I'm correct, is where we need it to be.
Yeah.
If you level the playing field, then we're beginning to talk about really, really raising it up really high so that everybody can afford to live here and everybody can afford the rent.
But the fact is that most of the people that work in Pasadena don't live in Pasadena.
Well, I don't know if that's the point.
I think that's what I read.
I don't know that to be the point.
Okay.
I don't know. But if we were all on the same schedule, 1.2 that does make sense, is that then if you worked in LA and lived in Pasadena, you would be bringing home the same thing, and it would benefit Pasadena.
Yeah.
And what you would make in Pasadena would benefit LA if you lived there.
Yeah. Let me amend what I said, which is that most people who earn the minimum wage don't live in Pasadena.
Well, they can't afford to.
Exactly right.
So there's another question up there. Let me jump on
So
this
do
one.
we want more people to be able to live in Pasadena and work in Pasadena?
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
So how does Robin feel about the higher wage with people having more money to spend locally? So somebody's saying, so if
That's a good question.
we get a higher wage.
And it's James, by the way.
And it's James Farr. If we get a higher wage, people spend it locally, it benefits the local economy.
You know, in theory, that sounds great. But again, if we do have, I'm going to go back to, if we do have a higher wage based on the Pasadena minimum wage ordinance versus the state, how are these businesses, my business, other businesses, how can we promise, that employee that's working for us that their 40-hour work week come July 2nd might not be 35 or 32 hours? So they might, in essence, in reality, be making $14.25 an hour. But for that business to pay that employee $14.25 an hour, they may have to reduce them to 8 hours. That's what I'm saying.
I got you.
And that's my whole thing. And that story, again, is repeated by almost every small business in Pasadena, and it's the truth. It's the reality. Numbers don't lie.
One of the things that they said in one of the studies was that if Pasadena were to move over to the state, we run the risk of losing people to Altadena and other areas that would still be on the same schedule we are, on a higher schedule, where they could make more money. I mean, so right now, if I'm looking for a job and I look in Glendale to work at a restaurant, and I see that, okay, they're on a state minimum wage, they're not over 13, and I look at Pasadena, 10-minute ride, and I see, okay, I can go up to Pasadena and make more an hour, I would come look for work in Pasadena, where I can make more money.
Well, I mean, I think I addressed that situation by paying, my staff above minimum wage, but not everybody can do that. I'll say furthermore that, again, numbers don't lie. How did I do this? How can I pay my people, my staff, my family more than I'm paying now? Because I haven't paid myself in 2 years. I haven't drawn a paycheck myself in 2 years. Not everybody can do that. Yeah. I'm fortunate that my wife works, and I've had some savings. I can't do it forever. That's what I'm saying. I'm not just, talking, out of a position of greed, as we've been accused. I don't pay myself so I can pay my staff, and that's the bottom line.
And you're paying most of your staff above minimum wage.
All of my staff, except for tipped employees who, when you factor in their tips, make far and beyond what the minimum wage is. And I'm thrilled.
So why did you jump into this?
Into the restaurant business?
No, into this argument. Because it clearly doesn't affect you.
Because I'm fighting for the respect and dignity of my industry, the industry that I love. I love the food industry. I love the service industry. I love working with people. I love solving problems. I love being here. And both of you have been in my restaurant.
You're fighting for the respect and go back to the beginning part.
The respect and the dignity of our industry, which I think has been maligned in this. We're not the enemy here. Peter Dreyer's not the enemy here either. We both have opinions, and he has strong opinions, and we have strong facts of what's actually happening every day in our businesses. I love Peter Dreyer. He eats in my restaurant. Ed Washatka is from Wisconsin. We're a tight community. I think, we have JPL, we have Caltech, we have Parsons Engineering. If we can't figure it out in Pasadena, nobody's going to figure it out. We're smart people.
So we need a little socialism, don't we?
I don't know I'd say that.
Well, he said he would playing Phil, didn't he? That's what I thought, too.
I think we need a little socialism. Get it off the backs of the employers, raise taxes a little bit, but... have a minimum guaranteed income. A lot of folks have been talking about it.
So would you go for that?
No, I wouldn't. I didn't say that.
That's an even playing field.
I
The even playing field, and
Don't-
it gets it off the back of the employer.
Don't put the cart in front of the horse.
Wouldn't you rather have the government pay for health care instead of you?
And then it saves the dignity of your industry.
But what else are they going to charge me for? I mean,
Medicare for all, folks.
I paid for my. I hate to say it, but I get
you'll
Medicare.
save money in other places. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, it's a pile here or a pile there. It doesn't matter
all
whether
gets
it goes
spread out
to the
evenly.
government.
And that pile gets smaller by the day.
Yeah, I know. We've got some comments. One is an interesting question. Once the wages go up, which, well, actually, it's moot for Robin because Robin's already paying over minimum wage.
But the wages have already gone up, too.
But once the wages go up, will you still offer benefit to your employees? I would assume you're going to say yes.
Yes, but let me explain it too. That one thing that's not mentioned here is the ripple effect. So I have cooks and bartenders and that make $16, $17, $18 an hour. So the minimum wage in July is going to go up from $13.25 to $14.25. So the serving staff gets their raise on July 1st, and then Michael in the kitchen says, I'm making $18 an hour, but Barry's he just got $1 an hour raise. What about me?
So he should get 19.
So he should get 19. Now, what I did last time, and the only thing I could afford to do last time, is I gave the first increase, I gave everybody $1. Whatever it went up, everybody got it, regardless what they made. Last time, I couldn't afford to give the kitchen the full $1, it was $1.25 raise, so I split it in half and I gave them 75 cents. So the front of house got their mandated, and in the back of the house, who again were above and beyond minimum wage, got a raise too.
Are you a union shop?
No, but I was a proud card-carrying member of UAW Local 467 40 years ago.
Aha.
And
He put his hand over his heart. I was going to say the damn Pledge of Allegiance.
Hey.
Get off of that mess, man.
once a union brother, always a union brother.
Yeah.
I understand, and I've been blessed. Honestly, I've been blessed to live on both sides, and it's made me a better employer. It's made me a better citizen. It's given me a better breadth of how to handle things and to understand things, and by being on both sides of that coin. But again, it's the ripple effect that's not.
Well, let's talk about the other ripple effect.
Okay.
The rent goes up, school enrollment goes down.
Okay.
You have less customers in town just because people can't afford to live here.
Okay.
You make less money. That's away from the minimum wage. That's just rent, the cost of living in Pasadena.
Right.
Now, the landlords say that's just the cost of living and what it takes to live in Pasadena. Isn't your issue just the price of doing business in Pasadena?
Well, I mean, my issue is one issue, and that's just to get on the state timeline of the minimum wage. Pasadena is a world-class city. Like I told you, the
So
institutions.
shouldn't they pay world-class wages?
Well, right. We should be able. I mean, everybody should, as we talked about earlier, as I said, $25, $30 an hour. You're not going to get me into this corner, but
It was just hypothetical, Robin.
absolutely.
Yeah.
But again, I want what's best for everybody. I want my employees to make as much money as they can because they've been with me a long time. I want to be able to stay in business to be able to allow them to do that, and allow myself to be able to do that. World-class city, world-class prices, world-class wages, more restaurants than anybody per capita, more. I mean, sometimes you got to do the math first, and I think if we do the math first and have a bit of a pause, maybe I'll make a suggestion to the city council. Maybe on Monday night they should enact another pause, and maybe in 2020 they can reevaluate this again. And that's going to be an election year too, so that'll be very pivotal. It might be a very interesting topic to contend with.
So when you say another pause.
This isn't a pause, though.
Well, I should take it back.
Another evaluation.
Another evaluation reviews, not a pause, because we will be paused, but another evaluation, and then to see where we go from there. Maybe we can, life's full of compromises. Maybe we can work something out. But I think first and foremost, the reason I'm here tonight is to talk about being on the state timeline, and I think that's fair. I think it's moral and ethical. I think it's, some people may not understand it, but I honestly think it's the best thing for our staff.
Let's answer some questions. saw a couple
They kind of
them.
disappeared, but I saw
Blow that
saw one about
All right, well,
Ocasio-Cortez.
yeah.
I don't know if we are
saw two of them.
necessarily going to.
Oh, wait. All right.
Okay, so
you
yeah,
take
it
the
was
first
from
one.
Dan, and
We can't
and
see
he
all of
talked
it, though.
about-
Move it
no.
over a little bit.
Okay, yeah, you've got to move it, guys.
There it is, right
you
there,
go,
right there.
right there. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez is the miracle. I don't know about a miracle, but she's pretty damn good. The massive wealth inequality is the biggest national emergency. I agree with that.
She's Mary Magdalene. apparently.
Andre Coleman, yes, we know he did. Back,
Go back.
back.
That
Okay. What message would it send to our surrounding cities if the council reverses on
Well, I think-
minimum wage?
That's a good question.
It's a very good question. I think it's a very simple question. The surrounding cities are on the state timeline. So, I mean, what type of message are you sending them? I mean,
What's it saying to the workers?
well, let's look at Long Beach. Long Beach is a city that's similar to Pasadena. It has its own health department. It has its own utilities. The city of Long Beach passed a Long Beach minimum wage ordinance, several years ago, and months later, their city council changed that ordinance and put it on the state timeline. And Google search it, look it up, and my question would be, why did they do it? Obviously, they must have had some type of impact either on the employers or jobs being lost. There had to be a mitigating reason why the city council that worked very hard to put that ordinance into effect, and then they killed it, not a year later, months later. So again, surrounding cities, what type of message? And that's a great question. But the surrounding cities are on the state's timeline. I think that
That's true.
I don't think it would really affect them because they're going to kick in 2022. We're asking, suggesting, but not pleading, that we just put on the state timeline.
Well, Robin, you are an excellent spokesperson for your side of the debate, and I really want to thank you for coming here.
So what would you do? Would you pause it or would you go forward?
That's an excellent question, and probably before Gail became a business consultant, I would have said that I would go forward. But let me put it this way: if the issue was whether we should raise it or not,
That's the only issue I'm asking.
and if the issue was just
Purely.
whether we should raise it or not,
That's it.
and there was no state automatic increase coming, the answer would be very easy for me. We raise it. The answer, I still would lean toward, I think, raising it because of the erosion of the dollar in 2022. But there's a big difference between 20 and 22. There's
course.
21, There's the end of 20.
And anything that happens.
And so if people need time to adjust and people need time to... I mean, when I was at the Guild, I had issues where...
SAG.
Yes, at SAG, where timing became an important thing. And we would make some major changes in collective bargaining agreements. And a lot of the fight came over whether we do it faster or slower. And we usually found a middle ground.
Right.
So I'm open to that middle ground. I'm hoping that maybe you guys might find one, because if we were here arguing, if you were saying we shouldn't increase the minimum wage or we should reduce the minimum wage, that's a no-starter for me, right? So I would be totally against it. Here we're talking really about a timing issue. I think it's essential, and I do think that whatever they do, once the state starts indexing it, it's going to be very helpful.
Right.
I wish that the federal government would do the same thing, and they haven't yet, and I would like to see that. But so I'm torn. I'm as torn as
I have a
as,
compromise that I would offer you. Before I do that, I'm going to say this and make our viewers aware of this. What I didn't like is that after the minimum wage increase did pass, you guys were hit with a styrofoam ban that cost business owners, or restaurateurs in particular, more money as they bought new packaging. And now there is a straw ban. So to be hit with those things, I do see, Robin, how it impacted your business.
Well,
And businesses like yours.
And that's an extremely valid point.
Right.
And the other thing that we're getting hit with is some people take advantage of situations like this. Our vendors are charging us surcharges, $4.50, $5, $10 to drop their
Right.
goods off at us outside of what we pay them for goods sold. So all these extra little things come in. Now, to some people, they say, well, hey, that's a cost of doing business.
It equals a lot for business.
Robin, I totally believe in the need and the power of small business.
Right.
I've been a strong proponent of small business. If I'm going to go after folks, I'm going after Bezos.
Corporations, yeah.
I'm going after the 3% wealth tax sounds really good to me. On above $1 billion. I mean, fine. Or above 100 million or whatever it is, because there are a lot of folks like that, and they can afford to pay more. But I know that small businesses work on a tight margin.
Right. So
And I think that it's kind of sad that two very important groups, the workers and small business, find themselves somewhat pitted against each other in this fight. When the money is where we're not getting it from the people that aren't paying their taxes.
This is the compromise I would give you. I would vote for an amendment to raise the Pasadena minimum wage to $14
Okay.
on Monday.
Well, isn't it already $14.25?
No, it's $13.25.
Oh, $13.25.
It's
Okay.
supposed to go to $14.25 on July 1.
Okay.
I would vote to go to $14 on July 1,
Okay.
which would be exactly where the state would reach. You see what I'm saying?
Right.
While we waited for the state to grow into where we are.
So what you're saying is you would propose that we raise the minimum wage in Pasadena through the Pasadena minimum wage ordinance to $14 an hour, and then it would mature to $15 an hour in 2022.
I'm saying that if they were going to move it to, if they decide to move it to the state wage,
Right.
instead of saying that there is no increase this year,
Right.
move it to 14, wait for the state to get to 14, and then go up to 15 together,
And-
if they decide to do the state minimum wage.
Well, I believe it's going to go up to $14.25 July 1st.
Right.
So if you raise it to $14 an hour, it's going to go up a quarter, 25 cents, July 1st.
No, you don't go up the extra 25. You just go to 14, they don't get the quarter.
Right.
And they wait for the state, because the state's next bump is 14.
Right.
And then the state and the city would meet, and both of them go up to 15 at the same time.
But what you're saying is then it goes up to 15 in
Yes,
2022.
if I was going to go to the state, that's what I would do.
Okay.
That way, I'm not taking money out of people's pockets this year. They do get an increase, and you can wait to go to the state at the same time. That's what I would do. What I would not do,
Yeah.
under any circumstances, Barry was right. $15 is coming. I understand your predicament entirely, but I would not take money out of anybody's pocket. So my point would be, either we figure out how to get to 15 in 2020, which is the amendment could do.
So you're lowering where
Nope.
the original would go instead of 14.25.
we
You're
go to
going
14, and then we would wait for the state, because the state's next increase is to 14, and then they would be together.
Okay.
That's if we did the state thing. If not, we have to go up the 2. But I'm like Barry. I'm torn on, do we go up
Yeah.
this year and stay on our own? So I'm fascinated by what happens Monday, because this is one of the rare times when I'm looking at council and I can't call what everybody's going to do.
That's right.
Well, maybe it would behoove our city council to have the discussion, review the surveys, hear public comment, and rather than vote that evening, discuss it and fast track that discussion for maybe a month, and then have that final discussion on what they do with it. Because you're talking, you have two opinions, both passionate on both sides. If the city council doesn't come to a decision on Monday night, there better be a strong reason why they haven't.
Well,
People
I've
expect
gone
a
way
vote.
over
I know,
our time,
we've got to
but
go now.
Yeah.
But I'll say this, if they can't figure it out in 3 years, 1 month's not going to help them do anything else. They got to be ready to go and look at the research now.
Yeah.
But I do understand that you got some really strong points, man. It's great points. And hey, you brought up some things I hadn't even considered.
I'm
Thanks,
happy to
Robin.
be here. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you. This has been NewsRap. I'm Barry
12-hour
Gordon.
edition. I'm Andre Coleman.
And watch what happens on Monday at the City Council.
That's right.
Check it out. All right.
Have a great weekend,
Go there.
everybody.
Okay.
Tone Talks brings to you the racial wealth gap in America, explained in 60 seconds. In America, there are 190 million whites, living in just about 82 million homes, while there are 40 million blacks, living in just over 14 million homes. To truly understand the racial wealth gap, you must look past the income of these families and evaluate household worth. According to demos.org, in total, white American households own 90% of the national wealth. In contrast, black Americans altogether own less than 2.6% of the national wealth, with most of this small sliver being in the hands of black baby boomer retirees. Black working age families are largely invisible nationally in terms of wealth. To give a clearer lens, the bottom 50% of American households control only 1% of the national wealth. And of the total 14 million black households, likely over 10 million black families fall into this bottom group that owns nearly no wealth. The racial wealth gap is real and it's growing. While 10%, or about 8 million white homes, are worth $1.4 million or more, according to Slate.com, when you deduct the family car, 50% of African American homes, or over 7 million black families, are worth no more than $1,700. Subscribe to learn more at tonetalks.org.